What's going on, guys? It's Mike Gastin. Welcome. Today we're talking about strategic thinking. I'm going to answer the question, what is strategic thinking? I'm going to share with you a strategic framework so that you can understand strategic thinking and how to best utilize it. I'm going to talk about why strategic thinking can help you. And if you stay to the end of this wonderful video, I'm going to share with you 4 tips on how you can think strategically. So let's get into it. First, let's start with a definition. What is strategic thinking? Let's define it. For me, strategic thinking is the generation of insights towards realizing your goal, the creation of insights towards realizing your goal. Now, to understand that, to have that make a little bit of sense, I want to define strategy itself, because so many people don't quite understand strategy. And then we'll spend some time in the strategic framework so that we can contextualize strategic thinking in a way that's meaningful. So what is the definition of strategy? Now, I like Roger Martin's definition best. There are all kinds out there, but Martin, I think, does a great job. He says strategy is an integrative set of choices that positions you on the playing field of your choice in a way that you win. An integrative set of choices that positions you on the playing field of your choosing, of your choice, in a way that you win. Now, let me give you an example to help make some sense with that. Let's take Walmart. Walmart are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. I mean, I think there are almost 2,000, if not more than 2,000 stores across the United States of America. That's insane. You go to any city, any mid-sized city, even small towns, they've got a Walmart. But they weren't always dominating the landscape. Back in the 80s and even the 70s, Walmarts were heard of, but they weren't everywhere. And at some point, Walmart said, how do we dominate the American retail market? How do we take over? And the strategy that they landed on was to become the low-cost leader. They realized that if we could get the lowest prices possible, that we would be able to now, over time, dominate the U.S. market. And so what Walmart did is they started orienting their business around getting the best prices possible. And anybody that's ever sold into Walmart through the decades knows that their purchasing people and their supply people and their merchandising people are phenomenal at sourcing the best possible price for a decent quality product. And they were able to orient their business all around this. Now, they did other things. I don't mean to say like the only thing they did, but they oriented their business around becoming the low-cost leader. They invested wisely. They were managed and led very well. And next thing you know, they have dominated the American landscape. So that's an example of a strategy where a company has made an integrative set of choices. They've figured out how they could become the low-cost leader, what they need to do within and without their business that position them on the playing field to be low cost of their choice in a way that they could win. And so there's an example. Now let's take a look at the strategic framework. And what you can see here is this process of strategic thinking, strategy making, strategic planning, action or revision, all towards a goal. And so for the strategic framework to work, you have to have a goal in mind. You have to have something that you're trying to accomplish. In Walmart's example, it was I'll say global domination. But every company is going to have some kind of goal that it is trying to accomplish. A strategic, higher level, organizational level goal, a vision of some sort. And so you have these steps along the way to realizing that goal. The first is strategic thinking. This is where you are spending time trying to come up with insights and innovations and ideas about how you can best win. You're looking for insights. You're looking for things about your marketplace. You're looking for things about your product mix. You're looking for things about your competitors, and you're looking for insights that can lead you towards winning in some way. And once you've done strategic thinking, and that never stops, it's an ongoing process, the next thing you want to do is you want to make strategy. You want to sit and go, okay, we've figured all this out. Now we need to, bring it together, bring these insights together and come up with some kind of strategy. That's where you develop what you're actually going to do. You've had insights. So in Walmart's case, they probably recognized in the marketplace through their strategic thinking that there were gaps in the market, that there was no one dominant player, first of all, that pricing was all over the place. There was an opportunity for someone to be more low price. And then they entered into strategic planning, which is how do we orient our business, our behaviors, our actions, our metrics, everything that we're doing around delivering on the strategy. The strategic plan itself is not the strategy. The strategic plan is how you implement a strategy. It's how do you make your business oriented around and work towards the delivery of your strategy. And then finally, there's action and revision, meaning now that you've got the plan sorted out, you start acting. And when you start doing the plan, you start acting it out, you start to measure, how's it going? Do we need to make revisions? Is this idea that we had right? I want to compare and contrast strategic thinking to strategic planning a little bit. Strategic thinking is something that happens on a regular basis. You're just always looking for insights. You're always thinking. Strategic planning is periodic. It happens once a year, maybe once a quarter. Businesses have a season, a time where they do their planning. They figure out what they're going to have to do. Strategic thinking tends to be more organic and creative. It's thought, it's creativity, it's exploration. Where strategic planning is a more structured, process-oriented activity. There's a way that you do it. There's a structure to it. There's a process. And you go through that process so that you can have a very kind of clean, manageable result on the other side of the planning process. Strategic thinking tends to be more about innovation. It's open, it's creative. There's no poo-pooing of bad ideas. You're just like riffing and coming up with ideas, some of them great, some of them not so much. Strategic planning is more about control. What can we put in place to control the business so it stays focused on delivering on the strategy? And strategic thinking leads to insights. Those insights lead to strategies. Those strategies lead to plans. Those plans lead to actions. And ideally, those actions lead to the realization of your goal. This is why I define strategic thinking as the generation of insights towards realizing your goal. It's on the front end of the process. You're trying to figure out creative, innovative, insightful, clever, or obvious ways of realizing your goal. Now, to be clear, strategic thinking is not tactical. It's not continuous improvement. If you're standing at your job thinking, how can I do my job a little bit better? And you're coming up with ideas on how to improve a process. That's not strategic thinking. Strategic thinking is bigger. It's focused on the bigger goal of the company, and it's looking at ways that you can innovate and come up with strategy. That kind of thing is more a continual improvement. It's process improvement. It might be lean, et cetera. There are different processes you can use. But strategic thinking is higher level, oriented towards strategy. It is not tactical. It is thinking about what could be. It's not trying to figure out how to make what is a little bit better. Now, there's a reason that this matters. A lot of companies kind of get stuck in this idea of continuous improvement. That's not a bad thing. Continuous improvement is important. You should be doing it. But they tend to confuse continuous improvement with strategic thinking. The reason this matters is that every company, every organization has this dynamic where there's more of an kind of sized weight that the status quo has upon the business and its trajectory. Some people call this path dependency. But the idea being that like status quo, what is now, like the current state, will always have more of an influence on the business, on your attention, on the decisions you make, how you make them, actions, etc. And so you need to have a strategic thinking mindset and process and approach because this helps you break out of the status quo. Status quo is not necessarily bad. However, it will hold you back. And the reason that it matters that you have to challenge the status quo, the reason that it matters you have to be willing to think outside of the status quo is because you're operating in an environment that's always changing. You might say, well, we've got control over our company. We're really good with the budgeting and the finance, and we've got all these processes in place and systems that we use, and our people are the best. But the world around you is always changing. Your competitors are changing. The regulatory environment's changing. Technologies are changing. And if you're on the status quo path, you're just keeping things as they are and continuously improving. Well, your competitors in the world and so on are changing around you, and now you're playing catch up. Things may change to the degree that what you thought you had under control is no longer under control. The world may have changed that much. So it's important to have a strategic thinking mindset because it keeps you competitive, it keeps you fresh, it keeps you relevant. And quite frankly, if you're able to realize your goals, then you're able to create wealth, security, sustainability, fulfillment. There are so many good things that come out of winning. And so that's why I think strategic thinking, a strategic mindset, is critical. All right, with all that said, now that we have a better grasp of what it is, let's talk for just a moment as I close here on how to do it. There are 4 things that you can do to improve your strategic thinking capabilities. Now, the first thing that you want to be good at is building context. The way that you think strategically is you have to have context. So many people kind of get into the details. They're technologists, they're detail people, they're experts, and they go right into the details. They kind of zone out of everything else that's going on, and they just say, well, let me just solve this problem. There's a problem right in front of my nose. Let's solve it. Hey, sales are down. Okay, let's get sales up. But when you build context, when you back up a little bit and you ask questions, what's going on in the market? What is it that my customers want? What's going on with my competitors? What's going on in the economy? What's going on in the political? I mean, it could be all these kinds of things. And you also start building context about your business. How are our process, our systems? You start looking at the whole. It reframes your challenges. When you start to see a bigger picture and you see that sales are down, you don't just react and start fixing the sales issue, because that's a temporary thing. You start to realize that maybe there's a bigger thing happening and maybe there's an opportunity. Like, yes, we need to fix sales. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but there's a bigger opportunity to leapfrog. It's not just to tweak that 6% we've been losing and make it now 15% profit. We might be able to capture a whole new market because there's a dynamic at play. The other level of context building that you want to become good at, and this is kind of a meta level, is you've got to be good about the human experience. You want to understand the human experience. This is a level of context that most people do not invest in. What do I mean by that? Invest in things like reading literature, taking in art, whether it's paintings, the symphony, going to the cultural centers of your city, learning to cook, learning about new cultures, other languages. You want to understand the greater human experience. There's so many ways to do that. The reason I think that that's so important is that provides a meta context within which you can understand the competitive context you find yourself, the business context. The reason that this is so important is because that meta context, mankind has been on a search for truth for eons, centuries. And that search for truth shows up in things like our art, our culture, our food, all the things that go into being human. And so the more you invest time into that, the more you have a better map, an understanding of the terrain that everything is operating on, the things that people think, feel, and do. And then that informs as you kind of dial in building your context. So it also becomes great fodder to pull from later on. The number 2 thing, the second thing that you want to do is you want to become good at decomposing and analyzing. Once you've built your context, your bigger picture, the temptation, if you're a big picture thinker, is to go, I got it, I know what's going on. You want to now take that bigger picture and start to decompose it, break it down into its smaller constituent parts, and start analyzing those parts. You've got the big picture, don't worry about that, just set it aside. Start digging in and decomposing, breaking it down into its simpler parts, analyze those pieces and understand them as best you can. Now later we're going to put those back together, but for now you just want to get really good. This is where you get into data. This is where you get into metrics. This is where you get into things like research. You want to go nice and deep, as deep as necessary, to decompose and analyze. So first, you want to be good at building context. Once you've built context, number 2, you want to be good at decomposing and analyzing a given thing. Now, third, what you're going to want to be good at is synthesizing, at bringing things back together. However, having decomposed and analyzed the constituent parts of the greater context, the greater situation, you want to be good at making unexpected connections, divergent thinking. This isn't a matter of just putting it back together the way you found it. You want to think of ways that you can reconstitute, compose your situation in innovative new ways, connect things that most people missed. Now, I'm not going to go into how to do that. That's a whole series. I should probably do a video on that at some point. But you want to get good at making connections, divergent thinking, finding kind of the hidden connections that people miss or the unexpected connections, and synthesizing, bringing these things together in new and unique ways. And this is what puts you in this really wonderful position to have great strategic insights, to be able to build great strategies and ideally execute on them. Now, the last thing that you want for all this to happen, and this one is so important for our day and age, is you want to have the right cognitive state. You want to have the right state of mind to allow for you to see context, for you to allow to be able to decompose and analyze, and also to make those connections, especially the connections, because that's where the magic happens. Essentially, you want to have a permissive cognitive state. That means you got to get okay with being bored for once in a while. You got to get used to not looking at your screen. These things right here, they suck up so much of our attention. They distract us. They draw us in. You want to be able to kind of come out from the screen kind of mindset, the streams of information, the doom scrolling, the news, all the things that distract us. You got to get out of that. You got to let yourself be bored. When your mind is bored, it actually means it's got time and room to think and work. And it will, in the background, be working. It'll be making those connections when you're not even aware of it, and will surprise you with these wonderful insights that come forward that generate once you give it the space and the permission to think. And so the reason I say this is so important, the society we live in is just flooding us with attention, flooding us with distractions and taking our attention. And you've got to proactively, you've got to purposefully set your mind to clearing that stuff off your plate as much as you possibly can. I understand you can't be a hermit living in a cave. However, try to clear the decks and give your mind room to work. And guys, that's it. If you like content like this, do me a favor. I've got a newsletter. It's free. You can sign up. I send an email out once a week with a little story, maybe a Q&A, maybe a little lesson here and there, easy peasy kind of stuff. But it pretty much aligns with the content that I put out here on YouTube. So if you like my stuff here and you're interested in strategy, little culture, politics, whatever, jump in there, kids. Link is down in the description below. I think the most important thing that I want all of you to know is that Uncle Mike loves you. I love each and every one of you. Thanks so much for spending time with me. I will catch each and every one of you in the next video. Cheers.